Let's see, wait for everyone to join us. Welcome. Let me make sure it's recording. Looks good. Welcome, everyone. Well, I'm going to start my spiel because most people have already heard this anyways. Thank you all so much for tuning into Lawns and Landscapes for Protecting the Lake tonight. My name is Camille Marcotte, and I'm the Water and Ecology Educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension in Onondaga County, working as part of the Skaneateles Lake Education Program, which is funded by the City of Syracuse to provide education to help protect the water quality of Skaneateles Lake. I'll go over some quick logistical items and then turn it over to our presenters. We are using Zoom in webinar mode right now, so you are all muted, so there's no background noise. If you would like to unmute yourself at the end, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. We're going to wait until the end to answer questions, but you can type questions throughout into the chat and Q&A function. It's easier if you use the Q&A box, but I know sometimes it can be a little tricky to find. So I'll also look through the chat. This program is being recorded and it will be available to watch on our YouTube channel. The link to that video will be shared in a follow-up email along with an evaluation and any resources. I will post a link to the general program evaluation in the chat. Please take a few minutes to fill out that evaluation after the program. We really appreciate it. If you run into any technical issues throughout, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat, or you can message me in the chat and I'll do my best to respond and help you troubleshoot. This is the first program in a collaborative educational series that will focus on several types of landscaping practices that help protect Skaneateles Lake water quality. The second program will focus on meadows and transitioning lawns to meadows, so stay tuned for more details coming soon about that. The third program is called Rain Gardens, One Solution to Stormwater Pollution and Pollinator Protection. It will showcase the Skaneateles demonstration rain garden and will also include Molly Jacobson, the pollinator ecologist from ESF's Restoration Science Center. It will be held on August 15th at the Skaneateles Library, and then our last program will be later in the year around September, October, and will focus on ditches and the role they play in water quality. Outside of the series, if you're interested in steep slope restoration within the Skaneateles watershed, please join us for a program with the Central New York Land Trust on June 15th. Their Director of Stewardship will talk about the almost 100 acres of previously logged and damaged land that they restored with native tree, shrub, grass, and wildflower plantings to prevent soil erosion and provide habitat and food for wildlife. That's enough from me, so I'll now introduce our first speaker, Dr. Frank Rossi. He is an associate professor in the School of Integrative Plant Science at Cornell University, where he leads the Urban Grassland program and teaches courses in horticulture, turf grass science, and food systems. He has advised more than 25 graduate students who have gone on to contribute to both the study and practice of turf grass science. Since 2021, Frank has served as the Richard C. Call Director of the Agricultural Sciences major, an interdisciplinary major of 120 students developing expertise in the science of the production, the economics, and the environmental impact of food systems. He's published scientific books, chapters, articles, columns, videos, and podcasts, mostly because he can't stop talking about grass. You can hear him on the popular Frankly Speaking podcast at turfnet.com. Take it away, Frank.
Thank you, Camille, and we'll be looking forward to Krissy joining us soon. I'm looking forward to hearing Krissy as well. Can you see my slides, Camille?
Yes, they look good.
Excellent. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Nice to be with you. I'm happy to do this. We've done this a lot. We got a lot of lakes in New York. We got a couple of big ones and a lot of little ones all over the place in New York, from Lake George to the Finger Lakes to the Croton east of Hudson reservoirs and the concerns about water quality in the New York City reservoir. So there's nothing new to us here in our urban grasslands program when it comes to talking to people about how to manage a lawn, manage that landscape along sensitive environmental areas and particularly lakesides. Big shout out, excuse me, to everybody involved, Camille and our partners up at Cornell Cooperative Extension up in Onondaga County and this Skaneateles watershed partnership that goes on. This is one of those things where the public really takes charge with support from the government. And I think that's sort of a great way to get ownership in these kinds of things because individual property owners can make a big difference. So for years, we've talked about try to teach people about water quality in lawns, and this is something I did back in the mid '90s when I got here as a young faculty member, no longer young. But this thing still holds on. What is a watershed? And essentially, the basic way to think about it is if anything that falls on the street in an urban environment, on the impervious surface, sidewalk or otherwise, and it's getting into a storm sewer, 9 times out of 10 in New York State, it's not filtered before it gets into the surface water body. So you could consider yourself having lakefront property, even when you have a curbside lawn in a watershed such as the Skinny Atlas Lake watershed. In fact, there was a very interesting paper published just last August by these two scientists, one at SUNY ESF, looking at various ways of deciding how the lake can be developed. You know, you look at the current land cover now, and you still have a fair amount of sort of green space, and certainly some of that's agricultural. But they're beginning to think about what are the realities as this thing gets to full development, if it gets to full development. You know, jobs like the chips factory, the Micron plant coming in up there is going to lead to an enormous amount of pressure on the housing. And I think you're going to see a lot of land developed that you would have thought would have never got developed. But if there's 10,000 jobs where people can afford houses, you can bet a few of them are going to be able to afford them down this way. So I'd say this is really smart thinking from a broad perspective. From a lawn perspective, you might be thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about land use for? Well, the reality is when you look at the summaries that these scientists provided, one of the things that they suggested as an important part of this process of determining how to use the land and develop it moving forward is to make sure you understand riparian buffer strips. And I'm going to contend to you tonight, one of the things I'd like to do is for you to think about your lawn as a riparian buffer strip, which is in fact physically what it is. If you have a lawn that's adjacent to the lake, anything that falls on it's going to make its way downhill or somewhere seeping towards the lake. You want that land use, whatever it is, to be able to filter out pollutants and allow for enough infiltration for the soil to do its thing and clean the water before it's either going to the surface or into the groundwater. So it's very interesting that a recent paper identified having these buffers along the edges of lakes, and I would contend that lawns are a good one. Now, when you think about the broader conversation, and I've had it with a few people in the Skinny Atlas watershed over the years, when you think about the broader conversation, you look to our agricultural partners. And so you see cropping systems where they've got an annual corn system here, probably a corn bean rotation. And in between the rows on the contour, what do they plant? Grass. When you look at streams and runoff ditches around farm fields where they sometimes have contour stripping and sometimes don't, what do you see next to the water body? Grass. That's sort of a funny thing, isn't it? In fact, when you look around at all the agricultural land in almost every single watershed where agriculture is involved in a lake watershed, you're going to see buffer strips filled with grass. So again, my contention is that you need to stop looking at your lawn just as something that you manage like Scott's told you to do back in the 1950s and has been passed on through generations, and understand that this land use has important value and your care of it is critical to preserving the quality of the lake. And it can be a lawn and don't have to feel guilty about it like a meat eater in a bunch of in a meeting of vegans. All right. So I'm sure I always get people, master gardeners, you name it. People don't like lawns. What do we got to have these things for? What's the purpose? The dread associated with a lawn. I mean, you guys in Skinny Atlas, you're worried about polluting things. Other people are worried about chemical exposure, killing their pets and kids and causing all sorts of other effects. So, I got to hear this all the time. What the heck with lawns, Frank? And I'm here to tell you, we need to imagine these things as land uses different than what we used to do. So let's listen to a pretty smart group of people called the UN. They sat around back at the turn of the century and said, you know what? We're a little worried about the natural world. Maybe we should think about trying to figure out how to get the citizens of the world to understand how the natural world services human well-being. And they developed a concept called ecosystem services. How do you quantify aspects of the natural world that support life on this planet, right? And when you look at, and this is from a paper of a colleague of mine who looked at how urban grasslands or turf grass systems, lawns in particular, contribute to these great benefits that you get. Now, a lot of times, most people will think primarily of the cultural services. So if you follow my pen over here, the cultural services, which is we care about how it looks. We want to play on it, right? It makes me feel good. It's part of my cultural heritage that I cut my grass like my dad did or my mom did, right? So we tend to focus a lot on these cultural services, and we let that particular benefit drive the way we manage lawns and still manage lawns to this day. So we have been taught to fertilize them, so we fertilize them. We've been taught to spray weed control, so we spray weed control. And what I'm suggesting is what we need is an entirely different way of thinking about what lawns can do to us, help us in the ecosystem, and serve humans, is to think about how they're helping with the biggest challenges that we're facing. And one of the biggest ones that we're starting to face that's really important from a watershed perspective is we get a lot more heavy rain than we used to. The preponderance of intense storms is going up. Is the amount of rainfall significantly increasing in our neck of the woods? To a certain extent it is, but what's happening that's more dramatic is we're getting the same amount or slightly more rainfall in significantly fewer rain events, right? When it rains, you get an inch of rain or 2 inches of rain or an inch and a half of rain. In fact, when you look at this year's March precipitation rates, and you look at the various northeastern states and the Northeast in general, you see that every state is well over normal precipitation for the month of March. Everybody's soaked. So stormwater management, particularly in urban areas, but also on lakesides, managing that stormwater and preventing it from pluming right out into the lake, excuse me, is a significant aspect of what lawns should be providing. Do I have I don't think I have. So here you are, rainfall filling a ditch, pretty common, and you see the ditch filled with vegetation. Oh, here's a little video of it. I don't know if you can hear it. It doesn't really matter if you can hear it. But this is the normal rainfall out in the front of my house. And this is the speed at which the water goes through, and you can see it where it goes really quickly. It starts to erode those areas, right? So it's very important. You don't see anything coming off that grass. Most of it's coming off the pavement. When you do see it coming off the grass, it's because the soil is completely saturated, right? So you want to have a fair amount of distance between where the runoff volume is created and where it gets loose. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how grass areas really help, so you can at least get some impression that we shouldn't throw lawns out completely. This is a small subdivision next to the Cornell golf course here in Ithaca. All those houses on the right, whenever it rains, the water moves down that street, across the road, and then across the street. And you see this on the golf course, where the golf course is actually flooding in a particular area. Now, one of the things that's happened over time is we've started to sample the soil in this area. And one of the things that we found in particular is the area where that road runoff goes across. You see an enormously high amount of sodium. So this is demonstration that the things that come off the road that go on the grass can be taken out by the grass. Now, the real story here is the grass is growing fine. That's a lot of salt, but it's still not enough salt to kill the grass, especially when you have all that water moving through it. The salt doesn't stick around. So there are ways of using these turf grass systems, like your lawn by the lake, to provide this stormwater value. Now, they've done a bunch of work here at Cornell over the years, setting up plots of different management systems, looking at a high maintenance lawn, a low maintenance lawn, and a forest system, right? And one of the things that we found was that the amount of runoff that comes off a lawn that's fertilized is actually quite a bit less than a lawn that isn't fertilized. And that's almost completely related to the amount of bare soil and annual weeds that sometimes fill in a low maintenance lawn. you get actually much less runoff from these lawns than we've gotten from wooded lots, right? Because sometimes the forest floor can get stuck with leaves and the rain makes it through, and sometimes will sheet across. So this was some watershed work done about 10 years ago here in the Cayuga Lake watershed. So from 5 years of studying how stuff runs off of grass, right, we found that regardless of the type of lawn, lawns with low plant density and wet soils had the most amount of runoff, the most amount of water rode off those things. Runoff volumes and the nutrients that came off were most significant during establishment, right? Why? Because the ground's exposed. When the ground is barely, when it takes a long time to establish something and you've got a lot of ground exposed for a long period of time, you have more runoff, but that will greatly decrease over time. Phosphorus loading is primarily a function of runoff volume. We didn't find any relationship between phosphorus fertilization and phosphorus loading. Now, I will add a caveat to that. We have been able to generate phosphorus runoff from some of these lawn plots, but only when we significantly incorporate too much biosolid-based composts. High levels of biosolid-based compost incorporated into lawns can lead to increased nutrient runoff. Okay, so what's the moral of the story before I pass it over to my colleague and I give you about 4 steps to think about for taking care of your lawn? The way to think about your lawn is you want it to hold the soil, so you got to manage the soil, and you want the vegetation to be dense. Do I care if it's 100% grass? No. Do I think it needs to be completely weed-free? No. Not for the benefits you want from it. But if those are annual weeds and they're not there for periods of time, or you have vegetation that isn't dense and thick, especially during periods of the spring like this time of year, where runoff can be greater, that's the kind of thing that worries me. So let's talk about quick soil management and dense vegetation, because you want to capture and filter these things. Okay, so we had a publication a number of years ago that I authored with Lori Brewer on these very easy steps for taking care of your lawn. And it was really designed around the thousands of questions that we've received in cooperative extension over the years, and the way we thought it was important to talk to people about taking care of your lawn. I should have put a QR code, but I put the link here in the slide that we'll put up when we get it. So we give you very simple steps for success. And as I said earlier, it starts with managing the soil. So when we're talking about managing the soil, the first thing you have to realize is this. No matter what soil you have, if you get grass and low-cut vegetation that can tolerate mowing or grazing from an animal, those kinds of plants build soils. Grasses build soil. If you've got a bad soil, a soil you can't grow anything on, try to find a way to get some grass growing on it, and you will begin to accumulate organic matter in that soil, because the majority of grass plants' biomass is under the ground, not above the ground. The majority of those plants are below the ground. That plant material is below the ground. So it's important to recognize that the fundamental aspect of taking care of your soil is getting grass to grow on it. Now, again, do I care if there's a weed here or there? I do not, as long as it's dense. The other interesting thing that we know happens from soils, and we've known this for, 50 years, as a lawn ages, it accumulates that organic matter that builds soils. In that organic matter lies many, if not all, of the nutrients in the amounts the plant needs it within 10 to 25 years of being established. Back in the 70s, a bunch of scientists from Cornell went down to Long Island and sampled about 2,500 lawns. They were very concerned about the single source aquifer being contaminated. And after sampling for 2,500 lawns and for organic matter, they found, wow, after about 10 years, there's enough of a concentration of nitrogen in your organic matter to support the life of your stand, to support your lawn without having to fertilize. So one of the things that's changed over the last 20 years, at least in lawn fertilization recommendations, is that you should be fertilizing significantly less if your lawn is 20 years old or older than if your lawn was 20 years younger. Now, you also want to make sure you're choosing the right grass. If you really want to have a traditional lawn, the traditional lawn has historically been based on the use of Kentucky bluegrass. And you can see in this slide that without fertilizer, Kentucky bluegrasses, many of the ones, especially the ones you buy from sod, they really don't do very well with not a lot of fertilizer. And that then makes you required to apply herbicide. So it's very important to keep in mind the grass you're growing there makes a difference. We promote the use of turf-type tall fescues if a lawn is, in fact, what you want to have. Because you can see, number one, you get a really good-looking stand of tall fescue, even without much fertilizer. And this grass has some allelopathic properties that restrict the development of certain weeds. And what we found is the best weed control with tall fescue is to seed it once a year. If you throw seed on these lawns once a year and you keep the plant density high enough, you don't even have to use an herbicide. So now we get to mowing. And so number one, we want to patch any weak and bare spots, right? Like I just said, you got to have dense vegetation. You want to mow high, 3 to 3.5 inches, because the higher you mow, the deeper the roots grow. And the deeper the roots grow, the better the infiltration. And the better the infiltration, the less water moves into the lake. Don't take your grass clippings off. Mulch them and the tree leaves right into the lawn, because that's the safest place for them. They don't impact the quality of the lawn unless they're covering the lawn, shading it. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the idea of no mow May and leave my transition to my colleague, Krissy Boys, who I've worked with and had great joy working with for many years now. The idea of no mow May has caught on. It started in the UK, came to Wisconsin. People are saying, don't mow. And of course, the turfgrass industry is like, oh, that's a bad time. Oh, it doesn't help pollinators much. And there's a lot of criticism of this. And if you want a traditional lawn, there's a lot better ways to service pollinators than not mowing in the month of the year when the grasses grow the most, right? Where it gets very difficult to mow the thing back down. My opinion is, if you don't want to mow an area, don't mow it. Mow it once a year and then get a line trimmer in there and try to mow it, because damaging it, trying to mow it after May, is going to make the lawn thin and worse over time. So this concerns me if you're going to let it grow and then mow it down. If you're going to let it grow, that's fine with me. I mean, I don't have any problem. The problem is we don't have equipment that can manage this well. And if you're going to, when you start mowing after May, you want to set your mower up as high as possible so you don't take the grass all the way down and practically kill it and thin it out and then expose soil and create all kinds of water quality problems. I'm a big advocate for not feeding in the spring. I'm a big advocate for not doing much on lawns. Lawns are about the most sustainable, stupid, simple crop any person's ever going to grow in their life. The majority of people in America, 70% of the American public, all they do is mow it. Only 30% of the entire country even fertilizes their lawn. And among those people, the average person fertilizes 1.5 times a year. So we're not talking about like life or death, you got to feed your grass. Now, if your lawn is bare, I might think differently, because I want that grass to fill in, because I don't want that water running off and sheeting across the surface. Am I concerned about fertilizing grass landscapes? I'm not. In fact, my colleague Carl Scamenti and I just worked with the Upper Susquehanna and Chemung watershed programs to develop our best thinking on how to fertilize lawns in watersheds. And what we've concluded is, we basically broke it out. What kind of grass you got? Is it a high traffic area? Is it basically a lawn, or is it new, right? And is it on sand or native soils? And then what is the amount of annual nitrogen and annual fertilizer that you need? And basically what we've concluded is you really don't need to manage any other nutrient other than nitrogen. You don't ever really need more than 2 pounds, which would be 2 applications a year. And we find that to be a defensible amount of nitrogen, because studies over the last 40 years have concluded that that amount of nitrogen doesn't cause runoff and doesn't cause leaching and doesn't cause excessive growth and doesn't cause excessive thatch accumulation. So we've really been basing our recommendations. If you want a pretty typical normal lawn, it says apply and only when needed to meet and maintain turf grass goals. Mature lawns do not need nitrogen due to the buildup of organic matter over time, right? Recycling the clippings is really low. You should never use phosphorus. Now, and I'm going to set it up a little bit for Krissy, or maybe I can take some questions depending on what everybody wants to handle. But we've obviously seen a rejuvenation in the embracing of the flowering lawn, and this happens to be a fairly traditional clover lawn landscape. Clover will bloom for about 5 months a year. I don't think most turf grass managers, I don't think most people care about this in their lawn. The one thing we have found is when you have a real high amount of clover like this in your lawn, you actually have to mow your grass about 20% more because of all the nitrogen that the clover fixes into the soil and makes available. And so I'll wrap it up here and say, grass is not a good choice for everybody. Pathways where you might use hardscaping, steep slopes, shaded areas. You need regular light. There's a lot of other things to do if you don't want a lawn, but they're a heck of a lot more complicated than a lawn is. And I hope I've laid out very simple ideas about the way to look at a lawn and consider breaking the cycle of the 4-step plan, breaking the cycle of the way we thought about lawns in the 50s and 60s, and try to reimagine the lawn as part of a functional landscape that's servicing the lake rather than harming the lake.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. I'm going to introduce Krissy right now. Hopefully, oh, yeah, we can see her. Oh, I'm so happy
Hello.
to see your face, Krissy.
Hello.
Let me give you a
Sorry.
beautiful introduction.
That's good. I had some trouble connecting. Hello, everyone. I made it.
Do you want to wait? Why don't we make sure you can share your slides first
Yeah.
before I officially introduce you?
Let me get rid of the chat. It says more, and then it says share, share again. And there we go. All right. Slideshow. Okay, we ready?
Let me introduce you, but
All right.
all right.
All right. I can
Perfect.
start. Okay.
So Krissy Boys, everyone. She was introduced to native plant gardening in 1989 by F.M. Newberry, founder of the Millersville Native Plant Conference and the Native Plant Gardens of the Brandywine Conservancy and Brandywine River Museum in Chadsford, Pennsylvania. Krissy has been a gardener for Cornell Botanic Gardens since 1992 and a Finger Lakes Native Plant Society steering committee member since 1997. Krissy is a frequent speaker throughout the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, focusing on the topics of propagating, gardening, and restoring natural areas with regionally native plants. Thank you so much, Krissy, and now you can take it away.
Thanks, Camille. Thank you, Frank. Okay, we'll go right to it because we don't have a lot of time. I want to orient everybody to where our project area is in relation to the Nevin Welcome Center, which is over here. Arboretum Road will take you right by the wildflower garden, but if you walk through the herb garden up the stairs and across Judd Falls Road, you'll hit the first entrance at the west gate to the Mundy Wildflower Garden. There's also an entrance over here on the east side, so it gets really confusing when you're trying to meet people, but we can enter from either side and enjoy this amazing glaciated landscape in the interior of the floodplain forest along Fall Creek, and then find our way out to the Horticultural Center and the Native Lawn, which is over here. So this is that west entrance I was telling you about way back when. Started putting in a just a colorful native plant garden in 2006. Department of Entomology students found that their little nets were catching a lot of bees over here. So we got interested in what they were doing, and the bees became a really popular thing because the plants were there for them. And then we discovered that there was a native bee population at this site as well. So more about that. A pollinator booklet was put together by the Department of Entomology, Robert Wesley, Rosemary Parker, myself, and Maria Van Dyke, who definitely spearheaded this project. A fantastic booklet to help you understand about bees and plants and who's trying to find, which plant. So that will be available online. So this garden changes over time. All native plant gardens, probably all gardens in general, will change over time. So if you walk midsummer down that path this year, it'll look something like this with a lot of Monarda, Echinacea, Baptisia, yellow prairie grass, little blue stem grass, and many others. So the native bee population is getting a little bit more acclaim right now and notoriety for how much work they actually do. We have this native bee population at this site. This is what their little ground nesting holes look like. And this is the site upslope from that garden where the native Colides inequalis was found. And right now, on a good day, they're out flying, hovering on the ground, looking for things to do. They're looking for plants, they're looking for flowers. And this area doesn't offer very much for them. It's a lot of turf, but they decided to nest here because it's very sandy soil. When we move over to the east side of the garden and talk about the native lawn that was put in many, many, many years ago now, we enter from this entrance at Caldwell Road. This was a wonderful spring evening way back when everything decided to bloom at once, kind of like right what we're experiencing today is so pretty out there. A walk mid-spring down the path will take you to the native lawn that was inspired by Danthonia compressa and Danthonia spicata. I would love to back up. I don't know if I can. Sorry. William Henry Hudson, we saw for a second. He decided that he was not a lover of lawns, but that was not during this time. We have a resurgence now in, what we can alternatively do with lawns. And back in the turn of the century, Henry Hudson was saying, I'm not a lover of lawns. I'd rather have plantain and buttercups and dandelion. He was a British naturalist. So where does Danthonia grow? All over the US. What happened? I decided to find it locally. Didn't decide. I did find it locally and wanted to know what it was. Since then, that was a long time ago, back in 07, 06, 05, something like that. Since then, it appears everywhere I go, and my friend Frank Rossi goes. So Frank sent me these pictures from Long Island. So this is Danthonia spicata, tiny little grass growing somewhere down there. I'm not sure where, but I was excited to see those images. So sorry, Frank, I did not use these with permission. And over here, a walk up the road from it's a street from my mother's house in Wilmington, Delaware, to a very old park. You can see this old stone tower and big old oak trees here. And what did I find? Lots of Danthonia spicata. And here, the road that I'm living on right now in Brooktondale, New York. I've actually moved my residence from Richford temporarily. And I walk up the road wondering what I'll find. And sure enough, Danthonia appeared. So you will see it if you look for it. It will appear. New York State Seasonal Road was the first place I found it. It wasn't this road. It wasn't this wide and it wasn't this open, but this is a road on the hill in which I normally live on. Old cemeteries, old parks, like I just mentioned, this seasonal road and abandoned roads. So an abandoned road on the hillside near me, also Old Town Road, a mature Danthonia compressa. Notice it's not curly. Go north in New York State to Jefferson County, to a town named Chameau, where they speak both French and English, and find this beautiful site that Robert Wesley, who's taking an image there, taking a picture, discovered 30, 40, I don't know, about way back when, now managed by the Nature Conservancy, supports our native grassland. So Sporobolus heterolipus, our prairie dropseed, it's very popular. It's widely available in the trade, is a native New York State grass, as well as Schizachyrium, Scoparium, our little blue stem. And they both grow here along with, yep, Xanthonia spicata. So back in the early part of the 2000s, there was an envisioning new master plan, new strategic goals were set, and one of them was stimulate the imagination year round. I was already thinking that a native grass restoration area would be awesome in the Mundy Wildflower Garden, and it did come to mind that, wow, with this envisioning plan, maybe we can make this happen. So we did get some funding, and by 2008, we were installing the native lawn near the Horticultural Center at the entrance to the Mundy Wildflower Garden. We started really, really small. So it's under 2,000 feet. It's like 1,480 feet, square feet. And we made a short work plan, but we did plan for this. Part of the problem, I think, today is a lot of people want to do this after they put geothermal in, and they struggle because the geothermal's already in, and then they call and they say, we've got geothermal installed, now we want to do something with native plants. And it would have been a great idea to plan this well ahead, even more than a year, but especially about a year. A year would do it. So we developed a mix, we collected seeds, we put a plan in for different paths and shrubs and shaded areas, and we went ahead and collected the seeds on the power line cut on the old road, the old town road, and the cemetery. We went to the plant materials center to make sure they were really clean. And then we installed this with the help of a $2,500 grant and some old sandbags that were left over on the Fall Creek from the water intake project. We sowed the seeds in the greenhouse. We also sowed them later in pots with expanded shale. That really helps. We made a super easy, anyone can do this kind of a plan where we're going to put it. We added the shrubs and the shaded plants and the flowering plants in our plan. And then we realized, well, how many seeds did we actually get? And I was told by the USDA researcher Scott Warnke and another researcher, Natalie Navarrete-Tyndall, that boy, the more seeds, the merrier. So, you know, you can go up to 3,000 seeds per square foot. And I had not very many seeds, but we did it anyway. We ended up with just numbers of grams of seed, and we had very low seed per square foot, according to Scott and Nadia, but we went ahead and sowed this site. And that's what it looked like. And that's what it looked like 2 weeks later. And this is what it looked like 2 months later. And what did Frank say? You must have patience if you're going to do this. And I remember that. So yes, you must have patience. You can also buy plugs. You can grow your own plugs. These were grown that time they were grown in the greenhouse. Today we grow everything in a hoop house or just right out on the pad. No fossil fuel needed. We had some really fun plants that we collected seed from at the South Hill Swamp, Houstonia or Quaker Ladies, but they didn't make it. They didn't decide to stick around. So we had a shaded area, as you can see, with open soil. Not 2 weeks later, like the lawn that went in on my way home every day, as I saw as I was driving at a new construction, new home site. But 12 weeks later, we did have quite a bit of grass growing. And by June, we had seeds forming. So this is a beautiful close-up of Xanthonia compressa and Penstemon hirsutus, beautiful purple flower, grows wild in our gorges. And I thought, oh, this is dry and rocky, so I'm going to add prickly pear, which is native to Montauk Point and Long Island part of the state. That's been a questionable addition, but it blooms and flowers beautifully, and it's still there, the very same plants we put in that long ago. So by the end of that season, we were wondering if it was really possible to do this. And by the next year, June, we were really super excited. And then by July of that year, we were really super disappointed. So early spring, it's looking more like this, and we're super happy. And we've done it, and we've got shade plants on the edge under the walnut tree. And we have a wet ditch planting, filling in with red lobelia and blue lobelia and all of the other native grasses, the wild rye, Elamis hystrix, Elamis riparius, Elamis virginicus, iris, and later on a combination of Meanthamum stellatum and Pachyra aurea and Carex grayi, Asa gray sedge. And then we saw a spot, and I thought, oh dear, it's turning brown. And then Frank said to me, your lawn, Krissy, your lawn is melting. And I thought, oh no, it's over, it's done. What will we do? What should I do, Frank? And he said, well, I think you should spray it with a fungicide. That's your problem. We took it to the diagnostic lab, and yes, that was our problem. We had a fungus attacking our grasses. There was several. This soil turned out to be quite silty. This is all fill. I thought it was going to be very well drained, but no, it was really a silty sandy loam, not really a gritty loam at all. And the rocks appeared, but so did that, and it would get wet, and then it would get really, really sticky. So yes, I suited up and I used Manicure Ultra, and I did that. And then by the fall, we had seedling recruitment coming back. And the next spring, we had our woodland edge still intact and looking more beautiful than ever with Geranium maculatum, Golden Alexander's, Pachyra aurea, big giant Acteas, Viola striata, all kinds. There's the cactus flowering, big seed heads on the Danthonia in June, some years a little later, and that's about 18 inches tall. So we decided to go ahead and do phase 2. And this time we didn't use herbicide. We used fabric to smother. And we also added some stone dust instead of sand to make it even grittier, and hoping that would help. Well, things were looking pretty good in the 2012 year on the original side. And sure enough, I was that picture shows the fabric still there, but later it was up and the seeds were added. And we can focus more on the mound than that side where the stone dust went in, because that was never ever as successful as the mound. So the mound has developed over time. Yes, it's silty. Yes, it did have a terrible fungus problem one year, but we took care of that and it managed to survive. Carex pennsylvanica has been added in a mass planting first, and then throughout the lawn later put in as plugs, and it's making its way through. The Sporobolus heterolopus grows really beautifully in one corner, and things in the fall turn out just right. We have an aster population that has moved across the entire lawn in that stony second phase that didn't work out quite as well. The asters fill in there just fine and cover the ground. They're rhizomatous and stolen the first plant. We have beautiful fall foliage. Mowing only 3 times in the year max. Mowing in 2020 by year 11, 0. And there's a quite billowy version of the native lawn. But coming back after COVID, so this was a time when no one was working there. We were managing people on the trails, but we didn't have our set schedules. We weren't using the equipment. We were wearing masks all the time. We were doing stuff from home. We were just out of the picture here. The herb garden was not out of the picture. That place was swamped with people, but this just kind of sat dormant for an entire season. And by the end of the year, it looked like this. And I thought, okay, there's more asters than ever. They're not that tall. This is probably under the HOA limit still, which is one of the major complaints that anyone has when they're going to do a non-native installation is, what will my homeowner association say if things get too tall? Well, just mow it, because it's going to be short enough if you start late in the season after your seeds ripen, and you whack it down with a weed whacker or a scythe. I've done both, and then I've done it with a mower set high. And I've mowed it, maximum 3 times in the year. Yeah. So what has happened since? A lot of spontaneous plants, a lot of spontaneous native plants, the dreaded nimble will, I'll point out, Muhlenbergia schreberi, say that again a little bit slower. That's the plant that most people want to kill when it enters their turf. And they might use herbicides on that. David Warrior, our New York flora botanist, said, Krissy, that's a native grass. Don't you want to welcome all native grasses into your native lawn? And I said, oh, absolutely. Right. So that one is welcome along with the others. Little blue stem gets a little bit big, but I dig those out every now and then. And then the non-native grasses that have moved in, we really like sweet vernal grass. Some of the others we don't like so well, but we manage to just mow them 3 times in the year and it's fine. But what about this list? The non-native forbs and the woody plants that have been spontaneous. Some of them are quite, like I would say, not acceptable. So we just mow at the right time. So 0 seed set would be important. So not to let the black medic dominate. It hasn't. It is now, none of these are dominating it. It's now quite the matrix of many, many species, and no longer the monocot in the mounds. So what did not work? Certainly the soil was a problematic piece, and the sand didn't really help, and the stone didn't really help. So starting with really well-drained soil would be highly recommended. Phlox subulata might work just fine somewhere else, but it decided to wink out here. Aquilegia may come back, don't know. Houstonia, nope, that one didn't really like it at all. The Antenaria, the pussy toes, they linger in small quantities, but we love them, and we foster them when we can find them. I've been putting in Pearly Everlasting and Sweet Everlasting, and they seem to like it there and do well. Dicanthelium acuminatum, very welcome new addition, tiniest little panicum imaginable, almost as cute as Danthonius bicata. We tried the bloody glove treatment. That's where you wear a herbicide protective glove and then a cotton glove and put herbicide on the cotton glove and try to just wipe the stem of that non-native grass. Didn't work, killed everything. So we started over at 1 patch and continue to do periodic mowing, and welcomed when the wet ditch was invaded by the common milkweed, which does colonize sites. We decided that was okay, and we'll pull it when it's moving out into the lawn. They pull pretty easily, but no, they'll always be there. I want to make a big shout out to our new native plant nurseries in the region, and hopefully we're working towards making sure that all of these plants will be available to the public coming soon. So I have some contributors to the native lawn that should be recognized always. And I also have a shot of the other grasses, those tall grasses that you can use as a meadow, as a backdrop. These are your native wild rice and your native bromus is another one, along with the penstemon. And then a teaser, I think, if you want to see something that happened in the gravel at some point, we can talk about that. But we had a wonderful success using our really deep-rooted native grasses way back when in 2015 at the stream bank restoration. So I'll finish right there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Krissy. That was great. I really want to go for a walk with you anywhere and have you point out all the plants because I am not good at plant identification. That was great. So why don't we open it up to any questions that you all have? You can put them into the chat. You can put them into the Q&A box, or you can also click on the little raise hand button and I can unmute you and you can ask your question through audio if that's easier. But yeah, we have Krissy and Frank to answer any and all questions that you have about lawns, native or not. Let me see if there's anything that's come in. Go back through the chat. Don't see anything there. Let's see. Don't see anything in the Q&A yet. Oh, let's see. Here we go. This person is asking, I have a large lawn water side on Skinny Atlas with some clover. Should I do more to convert to denser clover?
That's like Frank.
Our experience with clover is once it starts getting in there, it does a pretty good job spreading itself, especially if you withhold fertilizer. The more you withhold, certainly nitrogen fertilizer, the more likely you'll have clover continue to expand. I would also strive to try to keep that area as dry as possible. Clover tends to germinate better from seed after a really profound dry period, and when you get wet times after that, any of your shaded locations will just expand into naturally. So I think what I'd say to you is don't do a lot. Make sure it stays dense, and over time, I think the clover will just slowly come in as you keep synthetic fertilizers off those lawns, or any kind of. I wouldn't put any fertilizer on there at all, because my sense is our work shows that will limit the amount that clover will spread if the grass gets more aggressive.
Here's a great question for you, Krissy. What guide or resources do you recommend, or like what's out there for transitioning a traditional lawn to a native lawn?
Well, there isn't a great guidebook yet. That sounds like a wonderful project. But I would say look into establishing meadows first, and then shrink the size of the plant. So if you don't want a tall meadow, you don't want even a medium-sized meadow, and you want a really short meadow, then there's ways to do that through some of the catalogs that are available to you with seed sources that are unfortunately not regional. So, but you can get directions. So yeah, so I would say I'm kind of trying to think on my feet, but Prairie Moon catalog has wonderful directions. Ernst Seed catalog, maybe not such great suggestions, but they're the closest we have to ordering seed in bulk to use in sites like this. But Prairie Moon catalog has some wonderful cultural guides and inspiring words about establishing short grass meadows and tall grass meadows, wet meadows and dry meadows. Yeah.
Great.
And then locally, we have an expert right here with us too. So we should, again, I point to Janice Wiles, who's installing meadows along Skaneateles Lake. So you can go right to the source, and that would be Janice.
Absolutely. And our second program will also focus on meadows, so stay tuned for that.
Good.
Another question, this person is asking, I'm cutting down trees on a thickly treed hillside on my property on the west side of Skaneateles Lake, maybe 2 acres. What should I plant where I'm taking down the trees? And they say they're fine with a tall meadow. So that could be a good
I
option.
think this is a good time. Krissy, I'm going to let you take the planting part of this, but
Right.
I think you said something earlier that's important for people to understand ecologically. Most of the native plants that are really successful do well in really bad soils. In fact, the worse the soil is from a chemical property perspective, and Krissy, if she had time, would show you she's growing grasses on gravel. I think one of the keys to keep in mind whenever you're trying to establish something that's native or meadow-like in this area, that when you take the woods out, that soil's loaded with organic matter. You are going to have an enormously difficult time, whether it's trees you're taking out or a lawn you're taking out. That rich soil is not only filled with nutrients, it's filled with weed seeds and other plants that are not native, that are going to have to be managed meticulously to give that meadow a fighting chance, no matter what plants you put in there. And I think this is what concerns me, is when you're being patient and waiting for this thing to fill in, the soil's bare. So you got to get that ground covered and at the same time not make it too dense, right, Krissy? So that your natives can't come in. So you've got, number one, you've got to consider how to deal with excess nutrition and organic matter in soils. That does not favor native plants, in my experience, because generally anything that's native around here that's a close vegetation didn't stick around long. Because once it created enough organic matter and a bird pooped the tree seed in it, that grass, a lot of that stuff went away because it couldn't survive in the shade. So I think, Krissy, what's important to tell these folks is, yeah, be patient, but man, it's a balance to establish a meadow, whether you're battling excess nutrients or invasive, local co-naturalized plants like wild carrot, for example. That'll go crazy. So I'll shut up.
Yeah. Yes. And I would add that this region wants to be a forest, and the lawn has a lot of woody weeds in it now, and they need to be clipped. So wherever you take trees out, more will want to be there, or invasive shrubs will start moving in. Honeysuckle, buckthorn, privet, Rosa multiflora, because the birds are going to carry those. So it's very important to cover the ground. And our cool season native grass will do that, and it'll do it fast, but it'll get tall. And I call those the placeholder grasses. And that was the slide that I showed towards the end with the edge habitat, the elemus, the wild rye, the bromus, and there's 5 species of elemus and a many species of bromus, but yeah, combined, those work really well. Even oats work really well. An annual rye will work really well, but make sure that you're covering the ground. Yes, and that's really, really important. Thanks, Frank.
Someone asked a question that would be good to clarify. I think they said, Frank, do I understand that woodlands are less valuable than a managed landscape with regard to runoff quality regarding the lake? This strikes me as counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. When this was studied years ago, we put automatic samplers on the edge of these woodlots right around the Cornell campus. In fact, I think on some of the natural areas that are abut the golf course and the research center. We were shocked about this too. But one of the things, and maybe Krissy, you can help me explain this, but when you have invasive deer that don't really give you any layers in the forest, if it makes it past the tree canopy and gets down to that leaf litter, it just sheets right across, because there aren't a lot of things in a compromised northeastern hardwood forest that has invasive white deer. You have to fence things in just to keep things growing in a different layer there. So I think our research seems to demonstrate that the woodlots that are definitely impacted by deer that don't have a strong understory, that was the wooded areas that we tested. So it is it's one of the things unique about our landscape, that they're impacted dramatically by invasives, deer, and this was one of the findings. And the answer is, yeah, I am saying that a managed landscape in our case, in this case of the data, had much less total runoff. Now let's keep something in mind. We're talking about the amount of water moving off, not the amount of contaminants. Contaminants is a different animal, right? The high maintenance lawn didn't necessarily have any more contaminants coming off of it, but it had less water, that's for sure, right? And so there were less nutrients coming off over in general because the amount of water that moves across is generally bringing stuff. Now, the woods didn't have as much contamination in it as some of the other landscape types, but they certainly had a lot of water coming across it, and as much phosphorus as the low maintenance. So it seems counterintuitive because our woods are not like normal woods around. Don't you think?
So when you start to do the work, you can use, I think you start to use your trees. If you're taking trees down, then use the trees across the slope, and they're going to stop the water, and they're also going to hold the soil, and they're also going to be a place to plant. So I can imagine this as a steep slope, something maybe like what we've been working with. Frank and I have been doing the restoration area across the back slope here on this high hill behind our building, and we took trees and just laid them across, and they're still there, and they're holding the plants that we put above them. So think creatively. I think with your woodlot management, and if you're trying to open up a view and expose soil like that, possibly putting in a sowing of something that's shade tolerant before you cut, so that you already have vegetation there. Worms and deer and invasive species have destroyed the humus layer in our forest, on the forest floor. The herb layer has changed dramatically. So it's more of a mineral soil, the surface that is open and easily runs off, especially on a slope.
Great. Thank you. I know we're going a little over, but do we have time for 2 more questions?
I do.
Okay. One is about septic systems. Do you have any experience or advice for planting near or on top of a raised septic system?
Oh, well, a couple of things. One is you don't want anything rooting too deep. That's one of the rules. Second is if it's really sandy, I think the native plants are perfect for these kinds of landscapes issues. And I'll just add, when we talk about serious water quality concerns, particularly in the, human built landscape like urban areas and lake shores and estuaries like on Long Island, wastewater from septic tanks is the number one contaminant of a lot of our water bodies that we forget about sometimes. We get fixated on lawns because, they're everybody's bad guy. But these things themselves are pretty bad. I think, Krissy, if they're sandy, they'll work perfect with your neighbors,
yeah.
won't
I
they?
would love a sand mound, just like a gravel mound.
Yeah.
So there you can grow some really unique plants if you want a reference site. So a lot of us love to look at natural areas as our reference sites for what we can use in our managed landscape. And the Albany pine bush is 50 feet deep sand. And there's so many. They have a beautiful trail, nature trail. They have a center, so you can learn about all the native New York plants in the Albany pine bush that grow in the sand. And it's a beautiful place to visit.
I have always wanted to go there. That's definitely on my list.
Remember the Cornell blue butterfly? That's the charismatic, poster child for the Albany pine bush. And they love lupin, and lupin would love your sand mound.
That's great. This person's asking about no mow May, which I think is a good topic since it's almost May is soon approaching. This person says I could do no mow May over a large area, maybe an acre of grass, but you suggested not doing it. Before I get to doing meadows, would just mowing it twice in May be better?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay,
Way better than 4 times.
Yeah. I mean, you should mow your lawn as high as you can mow it, and as infrequently as your equipment will allow. Number one, from an emissions perspective, and number two, if you really want to have flowering plants in the lawn, you've got to ease the mowing, because mowing keeps plants in a vegetative state, and you're trying to promote the reproductive state of those plants where there's a flower for them to forage on. I will say though, transitioning lawns, Krissy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody's got to face the fact that lawns are deserts for pollinators. These are not places pollinators want to be. I do not think, unless you're really going to be intentional about, getting flowering plants into that lawn. And if I was going to do it, I'd actually plant plants in there. I wouldn't do it by seed. I'd systematically put in mature plants in there, slowly relax my mowing, and then in an acre, get a walk behind bush hog from DR Trimmers
I was
that'll
gonna
cut your
say,
lawn at 6 inches,
yes.
and do that once a year. Just do that once a year. And I think you're going to be a lot more satisfying, particularly with the plant diversity and the way it looks, versus not mowing it for a month and having it look like crap the rest of the time and not really getting anything in there flowering, which is fundamentally the goal. So I think we need to, what I love about No Mow May is it's getting people to think about their lawn in a different way. What I don't like is it's really not. I mean, dandelions are not big crops for pollinators. They're like going to McDonald's or something for a pollinator. It's not like you're talking about a really useful visit to a flower. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have these things, but honestly, what I would tell you, if you really want to help pollinators, is mow less in April when you get the spring ephemerals coming up, right, Krissy? You get a lot
Viola,
of these things that flower early, and
yes,
they're specialists, like they're associated with a local pollinator,
yes.
right? That they come up and they're connected ecologically. I think that kind of thing is a lot smarter to do than just not mowing for the month. And if you're going to do sort of a meadow area, I would start to relax the mowing, buy a different mower, and start putting different plants in there.
Yep, I agree. So, and try to do an assessment. So you would be surprised. You don't know what you find. You might have lots of violas. The common blue violet would be beautiful, and in combination with some dandelion, and be very lenient on yourself for dandelions too. So yes, they're there. There's not that much we can do about them, right? We have to learn to live with them.
Great. Yeah, I agree. I think No Mow May is good to start the conversation around all of these, but maybe it's a little bit of a misguided
Mhm.
month, I guess. Um, so we're going to wrap it up right now. I'm going to say thank you to our speakers for today, Frank Rossi and Krissy Boys. Thank you for everyone who took time out of your evening to join us. I know we are competing against Bruce Springsteen tonight, and it is hard to outcompete the boss. So please don't forget to fill out our evaluation form. I put that in the chat. I really do appreciate it. Look out for an email from me with the evaluation link, recording link, and any other resources. Krissy and Frank, if I can have your slides, I'll share those too with everyone.
Definitely.
Great. I will send all of that out within a week from now. So it might not be right away, but stay tuned. And I hope you will join us at future programs, and that I hope you're leaving tonight inspired and informed. I know I will definitely be going to the Cornell Botanic Gardens soon, since I still have not made it there yet. And I'm so close by, there's really no excuse.
It's beautiful right now. The wildflower garden is just full of trillium. On all of the spring ephemerals are in full bloom. So yeah, come see.
Yes, perfect timing. Well, thank you all so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great evening.
See you, Krissy.
See you, Frank. Thanks.